3, 2, 1. Welcome into Berea, home of the Cleveland Browns. Another training camp in the books. One more to go before we spend the week in Indianapolis. I'm Jason Gibbs. He's Nick Shook. He's Andrew Gribble. The hat's on. The hat will stay on. We still have a few more weeks of training camp. A Saturday afternoon matinee for the fans. And, getting back to business today. A little bit more like we've seen in the previous 9 practices prior to yesterday. Obviously, day after the game. Gribble, take away from you.
Yeah, it was definitely a physical practice, and there were some periods with tackling to the ground, and there was a moment, I don't know what happened, but it was like a hard collision between Dearness Johnson and Greedy Williams out there that drew it was called holding, but they negated whatever it was because they kept playing right from that spot. So it was interesting, but it was a physical practice, and I think that they go into this day off. That's what you kind of like to do, and then you'll kind of come in here for Monday, have a practice, then maybe a walk through Tuesday, and then you're off to Indy, and that's where it'll get started. Freddie did just mention before we start taping that probably are not going to be tackling to the ground in Indy. So it's going to be physical over there. They're going to be in pads, but no tackling to the ground until the game.
I'd be interested to see how fast these guys adjust mentally to tackling to the ground versus not tackling to the ground. Not that it's that difficult of a thing, but, once you get in that mentality, it's a little bit harder to shake it, and they were doing it a lot today. There were times where I saw a couple collisions or a couple tackles where I was like, oh, I don't know. There was Jarvis got kind of tackled by 2 guys at once as he hit the ground, but he did a good job of protecting his body. But on that collision that you mentioned, I think it was a helmet-to-helmet that they might have been throwing the flag for.
I thought they did a holding signal, and then people were just like, what?
It was definitely an excellent hit.
It looked like something went wrong.
Yeah.
Like the way they collided with no one having the ball, like that doesn't usually happen. But that was the most physical moment of camp today. That was just like an eye opener.
It might have been the best hit of camp entirely. It got me jumping up a little bit. So, it's good to see.
Well, and again, if they're not going to be tackling to the ground on Wednesday and on Thursday, then it makes sense that today and maybe even Monday we're going to see a little bit more physical practices.
Yeah, get them ready. They've got this game Saturday, but it was interesting when I was talking to someone before we taped. It's weird just how you watch these practices after a game. Like it's almost like these practices do mean a lot, but like once we saw a game, it's like that's how it's like I'm looking at everything a little differently. I'm not maybe overanalyzing some things a little bit more, but it really the practices really aren't any different, but it's just the way you take these things in are just so much different after you've seen this team on a field for a game.
Yeah, I think it's encouraging. Their play on Thursday night was very encouraging, and it also makes it, you're right, you take, I think, every rep in practice a little less seriously. You put less weight into every rep because despite all the ups and downs we saw in this camp so far, they came out and they looked pretty darn good on Thursday night. So, you hope that they can continue. They'll get a good test next week when they go against a team that didn't win its division but won a wild card spot and then immediately defeated the division winner in the playoffs. So definitely a good litmus test for this team so far.
Well, and a team with expectations.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to face too many of them. That might be the only one in the preseason that has legitimate expectations. So what was your takeaway from today?
For one, the kicking game was solid, for the first time, I think, all of camp. Austin Seibert hit 4 of his 5 field goals, including from 53 yards. And then Greg Joseph came out and was a perfect 5 for 5, also hitting from 53 yards. And each of them hit their situational kicks in a period at the end of practice. So very encouraging to see. Not the most trying conditions. It wasn't really windy or anything like that. But, it's good to see them execute when they need to.
Taking a look at the rest of practice and everything else from the day, both of you mentioned, I came in, I said, if you had to give a game ball to someone, who would you? And both of you said Terrence Mitchell. So obviously the DB continues to impress.
He had a great stretch there near in a red zone period. He intercepted Baker, and then he broke up a pass in the end zone. He's just played really well. And I think that it's an interesting dilemma that they have on their hands, especially after hearing from Dwayne Walker today, that Greedy, Mitchell, and Ward, they're all outside corners. He's not talking about them as potential options as a slot. So if you wanted to say these are our best 3 corners, let's get them all on the field, you can't necessarily do that. And I think that's why TJ Carey is your slot guy. But he was out today, so they've been playing a lot of Eric Murray in the slot, the safety. So it'll be interesting to see how they use that. So that really, to me, tells me it's more of a competition than we've been maybe talking about it, because you're going to play a lot of nickel, but you might not be playing a lot of dime with
There's
with
only
more
two
guys
sides.
out there. Yeah.
Yeah. We can sound like a broken record, but he's been all over the field. I mean, he's just flying all over the field, making play after play after play. It seems as though whenever there's a contested catch, it's usually number 39 breaking it up. So that's been good. But, yeah, it's really intriguing. I think it adds intrigue to how the safeties and the cornerbacks, in terms of roster construction, how many will be kept in each position group. Because if you have 3 starting caliber outside corners, then you have to account for your inside corner. And then if you're going to move a guy like Eric Murray down into that, well, then you become a little bit more fluid and interchangeable. So how many guys do they keep total and how many from each position group, we'll have to wait and see. But it's something that we should continue to monitor for sure.
You mentioned the 3 outside corners. You mentioned what Dwayne Walker said today. Was there anything he talked today? Ryan Lindley, the quarterback coach, obviously a very popular person when he comes to the podium, had an extensive conversation with the media today. Anything that stood out from either one of those guys outside of the DB?
I would say Ryan Lindley was effusive in his praise for Baker Mayfield, but it wasn't like contrived or something that he just did because the media was there. It was in response to a lot of questions about him, but he wasn't just praising Baker, he was also praising really the entire quarterback room. And the way he talked about it kind of made sense. He said he feels like he's lucky with the room that he has. He's got a lot of really smart players who pick up the system and are at a near mastery level. He said Garrett Gilbert is at a near mastery level of this system, which I thought was really interesting. And he also mentioned how, Garrett may not have a lot of service time in terms of games played, but he's been around this league a little bit. So he's got some experience and brings value as the third quarterback. And he also said, he relates to his own journey because he kind of bounced around the league too before he turned to coaching. So it was an interesting look inside that room because, you look at the quarterback position, you just think of 6, and then you don't think of anything really beyond Baker Mayfield. But, there is Drew Stanton, there's Garrett Gilbert, and there's David Blau. And Blau had a really nice game Thursday night for the most part. So, a nice look at the guy who's in charge of them and where they might be headed and how this might shake out.
Gribbs?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I'll go back to Walker, and a lot of it came up with Greedy Williams, and it's focused on his physicality. And I thought he represented himself very well in that game Thursday from a physical standpoint, and he has shown it on the practice field today. He's mixing it up a lot, and I think he looks bigger than he was when he got here. And this all comes back to, I think he was asked the question, be like, well, why didn't he do it in college? I mean, did you ask him about this? And they say they really haven't talked to him much about it, but it's one of those things where they might have been watching Greedy make some business decisions in college, and they know once they get him here, this is what you were doing that for. You have to now reprove yourself. And I think it's given him a chip on his shoulder because, like it or not, that physicality or lack of physicality cost him a lot of money. And I think that's what's going to be driving him moving forward. As far from a cornerback standpoint, I'm not saying he's out there lighting people up, but I've watched him and have had no issues with anything from a physical standpoint. I think Dwayne Walker echoed that.
Yeah, the whole tackling thing, I think we could put that to bed.
Yeah, I mean, there's
not.
He just looks like a corner. Like it doesn't look like a corner that can't tackle. He just looks like a corner.
And he's not afraid to get his nose in there. I mean, I think that's the greatest indicator of, well, why can't you tackle? Are you afraid to hit? That guy's not afraid to hit. Definitely not.
No, got right in there. Switching back to the offense, Kareem Hunt getting a few more carries, working him up, and one has to wonder if we might see him a week from today on the football field against the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, Freddie was asked about that after practice today, and it sounds like it's trending in that direction, but the way Freddie is, he's not committing to anyone with playing time at this point in the week. I mean, they still got a long few days to go. I will shift gears. If I was going to add another game ball out there, a running back who I thought had a really good day, had a huge run, is Trayon Gray. And I think that he is someone, not saying he has a great chance of making the 53, but he's moved one spot closer. And if you're looking for someone who is more of a between the tackles runner and needing one of those, he's maybe one of the only guys on the roster because the other guys fit more the category of the pass-catching, scat-back type. So this is a big guy who almost looks like a fullback out there. But when he broke out for a huge run today, he looked just like a running back to me.
He looked pretty good in that 4th preseason game, too. 6'1", 233, came on the field, and today, same thing. Showed you something that made you just go, wasn't expecting that. Yeah. And pretty impressive.
Yeah, his carry up the middle was a classic, power style run. He didn't have a lead blocker there, but right up, right off the guard and right up through the middle of the field, and basically had one man to beat and made him miss, and then just outran the remainders to the end zone. So it's something that could add some balance to your backfield. It'll be interesting to see where he lands with this group. But he was hurt. We didn't see him for about a week, and he came back. A couple days before that preseason game, was able to get some time, and we could anticipate some more time, especially if Kareem doesn't play in the second preseason game. I'm sure we'll see Trayon Gray get a few carries in that game.
Offensive line update?
Solid day. Eric Kush is the starting right guard. I mean, that's pretty much what we're looking at right now. And overall, the unit as a whole has played better. They were able to create some holes for running backs today. Nick Chubb had a nice run. Gray had that nice run. And they protected well for the most part. But it's, again, it's not as easy to judge as it is in a game because they've been going against a lot of these guys for a long time now, and this is also a very good defensive line. But so far, I've seen nothing that has really made me concerned with the first two groups. And Austin Corbett, again, looking comfortable at center.
More and more.
Yeah.
That position might seem to make a lot more sense.
In the long run, yeah.
In the long run.
Yeah.
Not necessarily right now, but it would be nice to have that established backup center come the start of the season as well, as we've talked about.
The way I look at it, too, is, why not play the veteran at right guard and then a veteran in J.C. Treader at center, and then you have a guy in Corbett who could do both and can be your sixth lineman and can be the guy you've been looking for who can play both positions in the event that someone got hurt. We know what J.C. went through last year and playing through injury and everything else. We understand the physicality of a long season, and this is also a team that expects to play more than 16 games. So why not have a qualified, legitimate sixth lineman who can play both, who you don't have to start? I don't see any issue in that.
On the offensive side of the football, Jalen Strong got the curse of the best podcast available. He came on, promptly proceeded to drop a few passes today. Didn't have a great day. Anybody that stood out in the wide receiver room for you, Gribble, today?
Ishmael Hyman made a great catch near the end of practice in whatever the drill they were running there at the end. I mean, he's someone that keeps making plays, and it'll be interesting. I mean, again, I'd say it's still an uphill climb for him if you're projecting a roster spot for him, but that's a play that you like to see him make, and I think he's been steady throughout from OTAs until now, and this would be someone a few years ago we would be the Josh Lenz player of training camp, but since you're so established at wide receiver, people are paying a little less attention to that, but it's just a tough room to make, but he keeps putting himself out there that you might think he has a chance for one of those last spots.
Go ahead.
Related to the receivers, but tight end David Njoku with a really nice catch on 4th and goal with the first team offense where they had to make some adjustments at the line. They had trips to the left. They flexed David out, and Baker and Jarvis were standing right in the back of the end zone. Baker and Jarvis were communicating because Jarvis wasn't sure or wanted Baker to make an adjustment, so he gave him a little hand signal. Baker made the adjustment, then hurry, got the snap, dropped back, threw it up to David Njoku for a jump ball touchdown, and that's probably what he's best at. So a nice way to cap that drive for them for sure.
All right, so Saturday's practice in the rearview mirror. We look ahead to the week. A day off on Sunday. Now, the last time we had a day off, we came back a little sluggish on, I believe it was Tuesday. Or was it Wednesday? No, it was Wednesday.
No, it would have been
It was after Tuesday, and it was the Wednesday practice. Yeah,
it was
the
Tuesday they were off.
Yeah.
Wednesday they came back. They didn't look as crisp, and we kind of expected that. It'll be interesting now. You're getting a day off, and it's on a Saturday night into a Sunday.
Ah, that's a good point. Didn't think
so we had
what
it
will
last
we
week too.
like?
We had a day off Saturday last week too after Orange and Brown.
That's right.
That was the
We
Baker
did on
Mayfield's
Sunday.
appearance at Progressive Field. Yeah.
Yes.
So
the great beer chug. But it will be Monday's practice is important because I think it sets the tone for the week.
Oh,
as
yeah,
to
especially
how things are going to go here.
Yeah, especially because you're going to hit the road the next day. You're going to get on the plane and fly to Indianapolis, and then guess what? You've got some guys who are not wearing brown and orange. They're wearing blue and white, and they were pretty good last year. So you should be prepared for, some battles for those 2 days, and it'll be interesting to see how this team performs against them, and also if they keep their composure in trying times. Because more often than not, in a lot of joint practices, you end up seeing some fights happen. And I know that this team is very disciplined, or at least appears to be very disciplined under Freddie Kitchens. So it'll be a nice test to see how they handle another team that should be up to their standard, and will be an overall good judgment of where they are.
it's going to be interesting to watch. We'll probably be following this a little bit, but it's not trending well for seeing Andrew Luck in action over there. He's not practiced in a while. I think the last update was on Thursday that he was going to miss at least the next 3 practices, so that gets you real close to joint practices. And then you wonder if it's just going to be Jacoby Brissett and Swag Kelly that we're going to be seeing.
Jacoby Brissett, one of the top, 35 quarterbacks in that list we went over ages ago. It seems like ages ago.
Who, by the way, has not had a bad camp in Indianapolis.
I said he looked like Aaron Rodgers against us 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's last memory I have.
That?
Oh, yeah. I remember that very clearly.
He's one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. There's a reason that they tried their best to keep him, hang on to him. And so I think it'll still be a very good test, but that Andrew Luck thing is a little interesting to me just because his history with his shoulder and how he's had these injuries and how they've really had to work their way back, it's very touchy. So, yeah, I don't think we'll see him at all.
Well, this one's interesting because it's a calf injury. And I think there's been people making the correlation, like after what happened with Kevin Durant, they're like, all right, these calf injuries, we're going to take this very seriously because we don't need Andrew Luck with a torn Achilles here.
That's interesting.
So I think they're being extra cautious with this thing.
And I would say if he doesn't practice this week, you won't see him in the preseason, and the goal will be September 9th.
Right.
I think that's September 8th when they play to open their season, whoever they open against. That will be the goal, and forget about the preseason and at some point trying to get him ready. But, you're going to go up against guys in practice that might not subscribe to the theory that the Browns are America's team.
Yeah. Oh,
exactly.
No, there's going
to be.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what? For the first time in, at least 2008 and probably since the 80s, this is a Browns team with a big orange target on its back.
Yep.
And they're going to receive some tests from some other teams.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, let's go enjoy a day off.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get out of here. It's a quick one today. We're back with you on Monday. Make sure you go to clevelandbrowns.com to get this podcast, or wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure you download today's episode of the best podcast available.